RJ Davis and Armando Bacot should be North Carolina's two leading scorers next season. But can they get all the way to 20 points a game each?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. Joining me as he does every week is our guy, Coach Pac Kilby. We want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or first watch every single day to get your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, and when you enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege, they're going to throw in a free custom Yeti-style Bird Dogs labeled tumbler with every single order. It's great. I literally was drinking out of mine my morning coffee today. So you everydayers in particular, make sure you go get it. Man, Pac, I'm so excited for today's show. Coming up, we've got 3 listener questions that Pac and I are going to unpack on today's show. And so, folks, I love episodes like this. We're not even really calling it a mailbag because we're just taking one question per segment, but it's the type of questions that we can unpack for a while. Lots of fun there. And so, folks, we want to do more and more and more of this. So keep sending them in. LockedOnTarHeels@gmail.com. If you want to email, you can DM me. Heck, you can DM Pac on Twitter. And so shoot them, and we'll keep adding those. We got a database of questions, and we'll keep answering them. This is so much fun for us to dive into. So question number uno. Pac, this comes to us, an email from Terry Weeks. Thanks, Terry. And he says this: can Carolina have 2 players averaging over 20 points per game this season? I believe with Cadeau at the point, RJ and Armando could each average 20 plus points per game. Y'all's thoughts? Woo! Pac, this is steep. So basically the question is, with Elliot Cadeau, a pure point guard running the point, is it possible? He's specifically, Terry names Armando and RJ as the 2 to do it, but can 2 Tar Heels average 20 or more points per game? Pac, this is lofty. What do you think right out of the gate here? I want to give some precedent in a minute to see if Carolina has ever had this happen. So folks, be quizzing yourself right now while Pac talks about it, and I'll give you the answer to that in a second. But before we give historical precedent, Pac, what are your thoughts?
You know, my initial thoughts is no, I don't think so. I don't think that we'll have 2 20-point scorers. And I'll tell you, I think this is just a well-balanced roster. And I think that the roster, I can see the line of thinking because I think the roster lines up where there's more talent, more shooting surrounding Armando. So he should have that success that, you know, we missed out on at times last year. And it also frees RJ up to play off the ball and be a scorer. I get that. But I also think that this team is going to be very well balanced. You know, I look at Harrison Ingram, and I think he can give us 15. I look at Cormac, I think he can give us 12. I look at Cadeau, and I think he gives us somewhere between 10 and 12.
Yeah.
And we'll have more bench play, hopefully, fingers crossed, than we've had in the last couple of years. And I think that that's going to be beneficial for us. And so in the long run, I don't think we have 2 20-point scorers, but I think that's a good thing. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but balance for us is key. And I think that we will be striving to seek more of that, more so than just force-feeding RJ and Armando.
Your line of thinking is right where I went. By the way, Pac and I have not given each other our answers, folks, before we talked about it, because we wanted to come at it independently with our own thoughts. But on this one, we are exactly aligned. I believe that the answer is no, that they will be under. I do think that they will both be in the mid to high teens. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see 16, 17, 18, which would be a jump for both of them. But yeah, maybe one of them gets to 20, but even that I think is a stretch. Like, I don't think we'll have any 20-point per game scores this year for Carolina, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see like maybe even all 5 starters, but at least 4 guys averaging double digits. I think Cadeau will be Pac, I'm going to go a little bit less than you did. I'm going to put Cadeau in the 8 to 10 range per game. Obviously, that's not much. I mean, that's right in line, but just slightly below where you were. But yeah, I think all 4 of those other positions are going to be double digits. And as you said, I think a lot of that is because specifically of what Elliot Cadeau was able to do. But you look back, I mean, 2017-18, all 5 starters were in double digits. Let me look back, 15, 16, 16, 17. Both of those had 4 guys in double digit scoring. I want to look back at 08-09 because I believe they had, all 5 score. Here's a great example that I think this could be more like 08-09. All 5 starters had double digit scoring, including Tyler being at 20.7 points per game. So, I mean, there is some kind of possibility to that. Let me add a couple other reasons, Pac, that I don't think Carolina will get to this. One of them is because the pace. Carolina has played a lot slower so far under Hubert Davis, and I don't know that slower pace, unless it picks up, which it could do this year, but unless it picks up, I don't know that there's necessarily enough points to go around to get that high for everyone. So I think that's a factor in it. And so points per game is part of that. Now, one thing I will say that could play in favor is that with Caleb transferring out to Arizona, there are going to be a lot more shots available. His 3 years in North Carolina, Caleb averaged 11.3 shot attempts per game, his freshman year, 13.7, and then last year, 15.1 shot attempts per game. Armando has never averaged more than 11 shots a game. RJ has never averaged more than 12.4 shots per game. So I think both of those do go up. So that could be an argument in favor of getting closer to 20. But again, I still don't think it gets there. I mean, let's think about it nationally. Last season, only 26 players in all of Division I averaged 20 or more points per game. And so ultimately, I think the number's under for both of these guys. Now, Pac, here's where we get to the trivia time of it. How many times, because I haven't shared this this quiz with Pac either. How many times in Carolina history, like as far back as the record book goes, do you think 2 Tar Heels have averaged 20 or more points in a season?
I'm going to say once.
Once. The correct answer is 3 times, but interestingly, it happened within a 6-year span. 60 and 61, York Luress had 23.1, Doug Moe 20.4, 64-65, Billy Cunningham had 25.4, Bobby Lewis 21, and then 65-66, Bobby Lewis again 27.4, and Larry Miller on the front end of all his crazy scoring 20.9. So it's been more than 50 years since it happened for Carolina, but it did happen 3 times in that span of 6 years. Pretty crazy stuff there. Pac, just to give RJ and Mondo's scoring averages in their career, for RJ, freshman year 8.4, sophomore 13.5, last year 16.1. Mondo was 9.6, 12.3, 16.3, and then last year 15.9. So that's kind of the range we're looking at. Anything else you want to add on this question or this conversation?
No, I think you nailed it. And you had mentioned earlier that you think there's a chance that both of them could be somewhere in that like 16, 17, 18 range. And I could definitely see that. But, man, 20 points per game is a lot. And to have 2 of them averaging that would be wild, and hence why it hasn't been done since the 60s. So
it's crazy.
Like you, I say no, it doesn't happen, but I think in the long run, it's going to be really good for us to be balanced across the board.
I think that's a huge win. Do you believe that they will be the 2 leading scorers though for Carolina? I hadn't processed that. That just popped in my head right now.
That's tough. I'm going to say yes, just based on what I know. But I could see somebody like Cormac Ryan really flourishing in the Carolina offense. So I will say yes for now, but don't be surprised if he makes some noise in that scoring competition there.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me in any way for Cormac Ryan to be the 3rd leading scorer on this team.
Yeah, agreed.
Interesting. All right, folks. Great question. Thanks so much, Terry, for your wonderful question. Keep it coming. Now, next, we want to stick with this idea of scoring, and we have another question about RJ Davis challenging for the ACC scoring title next season. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. I don't know how else to say it. I'm going to keep it simple. Bird Dog shorts and pants just very simply make you look good. The Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts, they're designed to fit slimmer through your thigh and your leg, giving you a sculpted look. And folks, I need help with that. Here's what Bird Dogs has done. They've invented this cloud knit fabric. It looks just like khaki, but it stretches to give that slimmer fit without sacrificing all the movement that you're looking for. They also at Bird Dogs, and this is my favorite thing, they use anti-sweat, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. And man, we need that in the summer because ain't nobody trying to get the stink of summer on them. You want to get that off. So folks, if you want to smell better this summer, go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. Once again, that's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs. We promise you. Oh, folks, you everydayers in particular, thanks so much for making Locked on Tar Heels your first listen every day. Coming up tomorrow, the 15th, is going to be the first day that coaches can make direct contact with the upcoming class of juniors. And so we're going to have some interesting conversation about that the rest of the week. Make sure you tuned in for that. If you're not an everydayer, you should be. Come and join us. All right, Pat, question number 2 today comes from Mike Hamill. Mike, I hope it's Hamill. Maybe it's Hamel. I'm going with Hamill, Hamel on YouTube. And Mike says this: do you guys think RJ can challenge Hinson for the scoring title this year? Now, Pac, I haven't checked with Mike, but I'm going to make 2 assumptions here. I'm going to assume that Mike means Blake Hinson from Pittsburgh, and I'm going to assume he means the ACC scoring title. Mike, if we got that wrong, apologies, let us know. But that's how we're going to approach it right here. So looking at if RJ Davis can challenge Blake Hinson and others for the ACC scoring title this upcoming season. And heck, since we've been talking Mondo, let's throw him into this conversation as well. Let me just give a little context ahead of this season. Looking at last year's top 10 scoring leaders in the ACC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are turning pro. That's Tyree Appleby from Wake Forest, who was number 1, Traquavion Smith from NC State, who was 2, Jarkel Joyner, who was 4, Grant Basile from Virginia Tech, who was 7, Isaiah Wong from Miami, who was 9. A couple of them are transferring. L. Ellis from Louisville was 3. He's going to Arkansas. Some guy named Caleb Love. No, I'm just kidding. Caleb Love was 5. Obviously, he's going to Arizona. Joe Girard was 6 at Syracuse, but he's transferring within conference to Clemson. And then the only 2 players coming back to play for the same team that were in the top 10 are Judah Mintz from Syracuse, who was 8, and our guy RJ Davis was 10th last year. He's also returning. So only 2 of the top 10 players in the ACC in scoring last year are coming back to their same school. And then you add in Joe Girard, who will still be in conference. Just for a little more context, Armando was 11th in scoring in the ACC last year. Obviously, he'll be back as well. So, Pac, in light of the conversation we just had about RJ and Mondo, do you see either of them challenging for the ACC scoring title this upcoming season?
If you don't mind me asking, what was the title last year? What was the points?
The numbers?
Yeah.
The numbers. Appleby had 18.8, and all of those top 10 guys were in the 16 range up to Appleby's 18.8. Mondo was 11th at 15.9.
Okay. Then yeah, I definitely think they could challenge. If it was like 21 to 22 points per game, I think that would be a really tall task. But if it's, as long as it stays around that 18 point per game mark, then personally, I think RJ will challenge for that. I expect him to be our leading scorer. That's my bold prediction right there, or maybe not so bold prediction. But I think he can contest for it, no doubt.
Yeah, and to give a little more context to your question there, ACC hasn't had a 20-point per game score since the 18-19 season. Any guesses on who that was? Cough, cough, the number 1 pick in the NBA draft that year.
Oh, gosh.
He blew out his shoe.
Huh?
He blew out his shoe in a certain lap. Yeah. Zion and then RJ Barrett as well both had 22.6 that year. So that's the last time the ACC has had 20-point scores. So, a couple others I would look at as well that weren't in that top list from last year are obviously Blake Hinson. He was 15th in the ACC in scoring last year for Pitt, had 15.3 a game. PJ Hall from Clemson, I think, is a dark horse for this. He was 12th in the conference last year at 15.3. But here's who I think, for me, is probably the front runner for ACC's leading scorer next year, is a guy who will be a sophomore by the name of Kyle Filipowski. Everybody knows him. He was, yes, thumbs down. ACC freshman of the year, had 15.1 points per game this year, was 17th. I just think he has a blow-up year for Duke. You know, they got so many guys back, but I just think he's going to be a dominant force and really steps up his game more. Unlike Carolina, I don't think they'll be as balanced scoring-wise as the Tar Heels, and I think that's part of why he might blow up. But, I mean, who knows? We've had, a Wake Forest guard transfer in the past 2 years and be right at the top with Alondas Williams 2 years ago, who was second to Buddy Boeheim, and then obviously Tyree Appleby this past year. So, Pack, any other names, anybody else sticking out to you, either from Carolina or another school that you think might come in and challenge for this next year?
No, I really liked your PJ Hall pick. That's honestly probably who I would go with too. I think he's phenomenal. And secretly in my mind, I've been wishing that he would transfer to Chapel Hill because I think he would be a great fit. But, Henson from Pittsburgh, obviously.
Because Jamarius Burton's gone. He was one of their leading scorers.
Yeah.
And so I think that gives him some more options as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, Wake Forest, we may not know who it is yet, but they play such a fast pace. And Coach Forbes is so offensive minded that it wouldn't shock me if they had the conference's leading scorer.
And they do. For the third year in a row, they have a big time guard coming in. Hunter Salas coming from Gonzaga. So just like Alondas Williams and Tyree Appleby before him, I would not be surprised in any way to see Hunter Salas take the ACC by storm from a scoring standpoint.
Yeah, agreed.
Woo, always interesting. I mean, that's the thing is with scoring, as we talked about with Carolina, so much it's about not just who's the best scorer, but about opportunity, who doesn't have balance. When we look at the national leaders in scoring, it's typically about a team where it's all about one dude who takes like 85 shots a game. And so you're often not shocked to see that as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody kind of just rose out of the woodwork and took the conference by storm, even if they're not necessarily on a team that's like, oh, they're challenging for the ACC title. So, well, who it won't be is anyone from Virginia, Pack, because my goodness, never. Oh, that's a good conversation. Great question from Mike. Mike, thank you so much for your question. Now, we have one more listener question we're going to get to today, talking about Jarin Stevenson and kind of what his decision-making process might be like next year on committing maybe to Carolina, coming a year early, or staying in high school, and what might be better for him. We'll get to that in just a second. All right, Pack, our third and final listener question of the day comes from Hal Easter in an email. And Hal says this was, this will make more sense, but he's responding to something I had said. And Hal says this: I agree that Jarin Stevenson needs development. My concern for UNC is that if we don't bring him on this year in a prior agreed developmental role, which I think is a great phrase. And he says, hello, Marcus Page and Sean May. He will go elsewhere for 23-24. can his dad give him the same development, his coach, he would get under the Carolina staff's guidance? And another question, would he be happy enough being the third option at the 4? So, Pac, we need to kind of unpack these separately, because on one hand, there's the question of, is it better to come to Carolina where he might not get as much playing time, but be under the strength and conditioning program of Carolina, practicing with the Carolina guys, versus staying in high school and definitely getting to play in game a ton, maybe unlike he would at Carolina? But then there's the other question. Would he be, where would he be on that depth chart? Is he coming to Carolina early, potentially as a developmental guy, or would he be at Carolina as somebody who gets a lot of playing time right out of the gate, even in a reclassification conversation? So, Pac, let's take that one first, because I think you have mentioned to me in the past that you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I do. I personally, I've watched Jarin Stevenson, and I'm a fan of his game. Really like the way he plays, and the way he projects to me is better than any other true four that we have on our roster.
By true 4, you're meaning not Harrison Ingram, I'm guessing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So
yep. Good.
What I project next year is for us to go more of a small ball, Harrison to play at the 4.
Sure.
But long term, like looking at a true 4, like a stretch 4, I think Jarin really fits what we're trying to do. And I don't disagree that he needs some development. Heck, Armando Bacot needs some development in areas. So you're never too good for that. But I do think that if he does choose to reclassify and come to Carolina, it will not be in a prior agreed developmental role.
Isn't that a great phrase, though? I love that phrase from Hal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good phrase. It's a good way to put it and easily understood. But, my thing is, and he kind of mentioned it, why sacrifice your senior year of high school to come do kind of what Will Shaver did, kind of sit there and try to develop into somebody that could play at Carolina. Now, no offense to Will Shaver, Jarin Stevenson is not him.
That's right.
That's right. Basketball player. And I have no problem saying that after that shade that Will Shaver threw out at Carolina after he left. But, Jarin he seems to me like, he projects to me like he can come and help us right away. And if he does reclass, and I tend to personally think that he will, I think he's coming to help us right away. What about you?
Yeah, on the show, I've been taking the opposite angle on that, saying that I think Jarin would be a little bit more of a developmental type guy this year. Whereas, as you said, I like your specificity there of talking about more the true 4. So keeping Harrison as a small forward, as a 3, and looking more at Zayden High and Jalen Withers. Let's keep Jalen Washington as a 5 for now, right? I think. Although, for this purpose of this conversation, we could add Jalen Washington into this 4. And so I believe, right now, I think I would start. Well, let's take them one by one and each answer this. Would you take Jarin Washington right now or Jalen Withers right now? As you're starting, who would you give more time to at the 4 right now?
Between Withers and Washington?
No, sorry, between Withers and Stevenson.
Stevenson.
Okay, I would go Withers on that one. Between Stevenson and Zayden High.
Stevenson.
I think I would as well. What about Stevenson and Jalen Washington, with Washington specifically at the 4, not the 5?
Stevenson.
Okay, I think so too. I think Jalen Washington's all-around game is probably, I believe, further along right now. But specific to the 4, and specifically with Mondo at the 5, I think I would take Stevenson over that. So we're pretty similar on that, just disagreed on Withers. And so, that's a really interesting conversation. So Pac and I are in a little bit of disagreement there, but I love that. I love the health of that disagreement. And you know what? It's probably better to take the coach's word than mine anyway. So there you go. Now, Pac, let's look at the other question that Hal asked. Ultimately, is it more like, I've continued to compare this to a baseball player who would be with the big club, the professional club, sitting on the bench, not getting much playing time, versus somebody that's staying in AAA but getting to play every day. Would it be better for Jarin to stay in high school, and keeping in mind there's some rumors that he might transfer to a different high school, maybe that's more competitive, so a higher level high school, versus playing at North Carolina where, you know, probably he's not, like, regardless of where you and I think, because of how we think Carolina will play, he's not going to start over Harrison Ingram at the 4 if that's what Carolina does. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
Okay. That said, would it be better for Jarin Stevenson to commit to North Carolina, fingers crossed there, and play and be part of the team this year where he wouldn't be playing as much, or to stay in high school, maybe transfer to a higher level competition and get all those reps, both in practice and in game scenarios? Which of those would you think is a better development thing for him?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So from a basketball standpoint, I think largely depends on really what we've already talked about, what his role at North Carolina would be. If he's going to come and truly be like the third best option at the 4, then I think staying in high school, even if he stays at the current high school he's at now, would be more beneficial. If he is going to come and play a role, 15 to 17 minutes a game, and get to compete against the likes of Armando Bacot and Washington and Withers and High, and play with all this high-level talent and practice with them, then I think that it would be very beneficial. Now I want to take a quick step back, and I want to talk about this from like a coach's standpoint, but also someone who's in the hallways every day with these kids. If he chooses to reclass, then it really does need to be a good opportunity for him at North Carolina, because, so many times we get caught up, like with Cadeau. Man, we want him at Carolina so bad. Guys, don't forget, this kid's a senior in high school.
Right.
And there are so many things that happen your senior year that are so important and that are great for the kids to take in and enjoy. And Cadeau's choosing to forego that because he does have a great opportunity at North Carolina, and he's 19 and he can go play in the NBA after that. But what I'm really trying to get at is it needs to be a good opportunity, because otherwise Stevenson's going to be passing up on all those things. And there is something to being a kid too. And I think that they shouldn't pass up on those things unless it's a special opportunity.
Agreed. And my friend, that's very well said. Those high school senior years memories are memories that last lifetimes. Like, I would not want to throw those away unless, as you said, it is for a special opportunity. And for Elliot, clearly it's too hard to pass up the chance at probably being the starting point guard for North Carolina right away. And that's another thing to think about too. Like, for North Carolina, the idea of having 2 kids reclass in the same cycle, that's a lot of life maturity difference. And I know with Elliot, it's like he is already of the age of this year's incoming freshman, but still, it's somebody that hasn't yet had his senior year of high school. And to take 2 of those guys and bring them along right now, maybe there's health in being able for them to do that together, but that is an extra burden on the coaching staff and the team. So
in a world where age and maturity wins, that's tough to bring them along. And Cadeau's fantastic and Stevenson's fantastic, but that's going to be a challenge.
Yep. And we've seen that play out. Yes, there have been a couple examples in the one and done era of schools that have won with primarily one and done talent, but they have been the exception rather than the rule. As you just said, it is these teams that are veteran laden. And even with Cadeau, that is what North Carolina is going to be. As we said on yesterday's show, yes, it's probably a true pure freshman in Cadeau starting, but starting alongside a senior in RJ Davis in the backcourt, probably a fifth-year guy on the wing in Cormac Ryan, a junior at the small ball 4 in Harrison Ingram, and another fifth-year guy in Armando Bacot. So Carolina will not be one and done with Elliot Cadeau. It's just he's part of a veteran-laden team. So I think that's another great point on that. Man, Hal, thank you for your question. Everyone, thank you for your question. Folks, keep them coming. This is such a fun conversation pack. I hope you had as much fun as I did diving through those. All you folks out there listening and watching, hope you had as much fun too. If you want to have more fun like this, you got to send us more questions that we can answer. LockedOnTarHeels@gmail.com. You can send them to the show on Twitter @LockedOnHeels. You can send them to me on Twitter @IsaacSchade, or heck, even Pack @Coach_K23. I think I even got a question on LinkedIn today. So find us anywhere. We'll be there for you. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on YouTube, smash the like button, and leave your comments. I can't wait to see if anybody got those years right that Carolina had 2 20-point or more scores. Can't wait to be right back with you all tomorrow. But a reminder in the meantime, it's a great day to be a Tar Heel. Pack, you know it. I know it. We'll talk again tomorrow. But until then, peace.